As the days and weeks tick down to the November election for the next US president, it's becoming more and more apparent that it's freedom of speech itself, the US Constitution, the First Amendment, that is the last obstacle to the total control of the information flow and supply desired by the oligarchs, that group of self-appointed individuals that seems to have decided that the right to control the narrative is theirs.
This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Does anybody have any spare conspiracy theories to give me? I'm running out of them because mine are all coming true. Today, we're going to talk about something serious. This is a story that I am pretty sure either is being suppressed or MSM is not going to touch. And that would be the UK being involved in interfering with our elections. In addition, which is something I've been talking about like forever on this channel, their influence here on circumnavigating our First Amendment and undermining our Constitution. Exposing this internal document leak are independent journalists Matt Taibbi from Racket and Paul Thacker from the Disinformation Chronicle, citing internal documents from the Center for Countering Digital Hate, otherwise known as the CCDH. We all are familiar with that group, right? I've said in the past that their CEO, Imran Ahmed, is like the Christopher Boozy of the UK.
You know, your sort of thing of, well, I'm willing to tolerate the normalization of anti-Semitism because some people were banned for saying that men can't be women.
Imran,
I disagree with you on that.
You can't disagree with something I didn't say. Should you be able to call for an armed revolution on social media?
Well, do you think they should?
If we were living in the social media age in 1776, this country never would have been created.
In what way is Donald
He was
Trump
banned from all the social media platforms.
Were you worried about his ability to get his message out?
Well, his ability to get his message out was definitely reduced significantly. As you said yourself, when you ban people from social media, you said it yourself, they lose reach.
In this article, Matt Taibbi and Paul Thacker reveal that the Center for Countering Digital Hate, whose founder, by the way, is British political operative Morgan McSweeney, is now advising the Kamala Harris campaign. So you have this little annoying prick, Imran Ahmed, up in our government advising the Biden-Harris administration, as well as getting cozy with Democrats like Senator Amy Klobuchar, who has introduced multiple bills to regulate online misinformation. One of those bills many of us are familiar with is that KOSA bill, otherwise known as the Kids Online Safety Act. I have said now on numerous occasions that this parents network by the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity is really just a front in order to go ahead in the back to drive regulation to push censorship. This time now, focusing using the children as the excuse to do it. Hopefully you've noticed that there has been a shift in their strategy ever since they were exposed in the Twitter files for colluding with the social media companies to censor Americans. So now what we're seeing is, oh, we need to keep the kids safe. Not even talking about the over 300,000 missing migrant children that are getting trafficked and sold and probably not alive anymore. What it really boils down to, in my opinion, is about protecting the elite. They want to be able to control the information so people do not find out about the dirty deeds and crimes against humanity that they have been inflicting onto the world. And it's all starting to come out. I mean, Diddy in itself is going to rock this country only if we have a fair election and Donald Trump gets back into office. Why do you think all the billionaires and Hollywood elite are backing Kamala? It's not because they think she's going to be an awesome president. No, they want the money to keep flowing from the taxpayer to their grifts, as well as protect them from all these crimes that are going on with these children. Anyway, back to this article. So the documents that were obtained were hyper-focused on Elon Musk and in its agenda stating Kill Musk's Twitter is the first item in the template of its monthly agenda notes dating back to early months of 2024. So just a little bit of background. CEO Imran Ahmed's Center for Countering Digital Hate, otherwise known as CCDH, is the anti-disinformation activist ally of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour Party and a messaging vehicle for Labour's neoliberal think tank, Labour Together. Both the CCDH and Labour Together were founded by Morgan McSweeney, who is credited with piloting Starmer's rise to Downing Street. The CCDH documents carry particular importance because McSweeney's Labour Together operatives have been teaching election strategy to Kamala and Tim Walz, leading Politico to call Labour and the Democrats sister parties. Well, duh. Yeah, I think we can see the similarities between the Labour Party and the Democrats, no doubt. CCDH's focus on Kill Musk's Twitter also adds to legal questions about the nonprofit's tax-exempt status as a 501c3 organization. According to the IRS, CCDH could lose its special tax status if a substantial part of its activities is attempting to influence legislation. I keep saying this about Archewell Fugazi Public Charity. Their status needs to be revoked as of yesterday. Yet, CCDH's third item on its annual priority list is trigger EU and UK regulatory action, and the group previously employed the firm Lot 16 to lobby congressional offices on misinformation in Washington. In the last couple of months, there have been quite a few articles from the Washington Post and Politico about British advisors from Labour Together rescuing the distressed political damsel that is the Harris-Walz campaign. Politico cast McSweeney as the election mastermind who first helped Keir Starmer defeat leftist Jeremy Corbyn to become the head of Labour, all the way to Starmer's landslide win over Conservatives to become Prime Minister this past July, implying that McSweeney and his team can perform a similar miracle for Harris. Oh, I don't think so. I mean, whatever they're doing with her, it's not working.
Oh, look at you. You're prettier than you're on television. Mike, look at her. No.
The stateside dispatch of Labour personnel has been depicted in British media as a self-interested gambit to keep America's war machine closely aligned with Israel and Ukraine, and billions of American defense dollars flowing in both directions. Of course, this is what they've been doing to us over the last 4 years. Is anybody surprised that Labour Together has been operating in the U.S. for several years through CCDH? The Starmer Labour Together formula for regaining power in the UK relied heavily on CCDH's aggressive efforts to deplatform rivals on the left and right by lobbing accusations of bigotry, misinformation, and other misdeeds. Does that not sound familiar to you? Now, my gorgeous, good-looking friends, do you understand how special all of us are? Do you realize that we have been a part of something, we have witnessed something that many do not understand yet, and that we can actually talk from a place of experience? So what had been happening back in 2020, and this was going on, and nobody knew why people were getting booted off and deplatformed, especially if you talked about Meghan's pregnancy or Megnancy. Well, it's because this is what was going on in the background. As it says here, in the U.S., a now defunct CCDH offshoot called Stop Funding Fake News led multiple successful boycotts of media figures across the spectrum, from Zero Hedge during the BLM riots to the Federalist. The formula often involved collaborating with a mainstream media outlet to level an accusation of bigotry, followed by a pressure campaign against advertisers to shut off revenue to the target. So, you know, the Stop Hate for Profit, all of that Harry and Meghan had backed when they came over here in 2020, leading up to the 2020 elections. So when I say that Harry and Meghan interfered with our elections, they did. They were behind these campaigns that were influencing, getting people taken down, getting advertisers to not run ads. But we didn't know all of that yet. We didn't know what was going on because we were so distracted with the noise that these two had been making, which I guarantee The story about Megxit that the public was told is not the real story. There is no way, and let's use some common sense now. Rather than push back and say, oh, this person said this and that person said this, throw that out the window. Harry is a prince of the United Kingdom. He has people watching him 24/7. He's got security. He's got people all around him. You mean to tell me that the Queen had zero clue that they were just going to pick up and leave and not come back? Come on. Think about this. Even their security communicating with intelligence. Let's not be stupid. And then when you look at Harry's mission on fixing the media, or so he wants to fix the media, don't you think he told his father, he's like, Pa, allow me to go to the United States so I could work on the media. We need to get control back of the narrative because social media, and then going off about his mental health and all that other nonsense. And then Meghan creating drama in the background, all for distraction. Now, I believe, and I'm sticking to my theory, that the royal family absolutely knew what Harry was planning on doing when he came over here for the year Rumspringa, and that was to help support the Biden-Harris campaign. And I believe through this psychological warfare that they have unleashed onto us is a part of getting this control back and driving this regulation around our First Amendment. Many of you don't believe that, but I believe that because the family is very supportive of Agenda 2030. And as I've outlined, that NATO, the UN, and the WEF are 3 organizations that the royal family is tightly aligned with. So even though you haven't heard the king's opinion, you can bet that he is driving full force on meeting those SDG goals because he wants to save the planet. He doesn't care about the United States. He doesn't care that, we want our freedom and our Constitution matters. He wants all of us to get in line and become this global citizen. I believe that the Queen did think Harry and Meghan were going to come back after the year grace period that they were given, but Meghan went rogue. They didn't anticipate seeing her go on national television and lie to the world about how she was treated. They were completely blindsided with that, but they knew to some degree when they came over in 2020 what they were trying to forge here in the United States, or at least that's what they told them, on how they would reshape the media landscape. Now, when you hear that, you think of, oh, he's coming here to, fix the newspapers and tabloids, I guess. You don't think that he came over here to rebuild the online space. I mean, when you're talking about media, I traditionally think about television, broadcast, and newspapers and magazines. You don't necessarily think that our voices, the public square, is what he was after. During that time, it was the CCDH who had been working with media outlets and advertisers to stop revenue to independent journalists' websites as well as news sites. I mean, seriously, looking at this, these assholes really went out of their way to shut down speech that challenged the Biden-Harris narrative. And Harry and Meghan were a part of all of this. Not only were they in front of the camera, influencing with Glow, Meghan's bestie, but they were also behind the scenes working with the tech companies. I've said this so many times that it's not just the 2024 election that the UK had been involved with. They were involved with interfering with the 2020 election as well. And now we have this coming out from Racket and the Disinformation Chronicles. It's only a matter of time, folks, before Harry now is put on blast for his involvement. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, how are Harry and Meghan connected to Keir Starmer and the CCDH in this election interference, as well as the work that CCDH has been doing to shut free speech down and kill Twitter? Let me show you. So in these meetings that are being chaired by the CCDH, you have all these kinds of attendees from the Department of State, from the UN, the ones where you see the devil's face. That's where Meghan and Harry either have given money, have been working with their parents' network, or have been aligned with in so-called quote-unquote partnership. On this list, you have Accountable Tech, Oak Foundation, and All Tech is Human. There you go. Archewell Fugazi Public Charity Parents Network being promoted by Accountable Tech. You see what's going on here? You see what they're doing? So now they're trying to pretend that they're going to be helping kids, but Really, this is behind the scenes trying to influence to not only take down X and suppress free speech, but also help this current situation that we have here to get elected into office. Other attendees that are backing and supporting in these meetings, you have the founding attorney of the Social Media Victims Law Center. Does that not sound familiar to you? I hope it does. Dated March 9th, 2024, Sussex Squad terrorist R.S. Locke writes, Meghan Markle shared that the Archewell Fugazi Public Charity works with the Social Media Victims Law Center, calling it heartbreaking work. It's parents whose children have taken their lives because of what was happening to them in the online space. Hashtag South by Southwest. Remember that South by Southwest where Meghan sat up there pretending not to remember her soap dish commercial when Katie Couric asked her to tell the story? Well, I think that was the moment where Meghan started to introduce back again online bullying and the dangers to social media, as well as now putting a target on the backs of the YouTubers because they no longer could do that to X.
It's a platform that has quite a bit of hate and rhetoric and incentivizes people to create pages where they can churn out very, very inciting comments and conspiracy theories that can have a tremendously negative effect on someone's mental health, their physical safety.
This witch pretty much told everyone that this is the moving forward plan. I'm telling you, man, the more that we dig into this, the more I feel a class action coming on for these two. Next, we have participants from the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. That should sound familiar to you because Meghan and Harry have Jory Craig on their payroll, and she is the one that put out this Archewell insight report on children and social media, another Fugazi report that's going to be used to support regulation in the future, whether it be here in the United States or all over the world, like in Australia, trying to push through those laws, or in Canada. Let's get back to this article. 60 Minutes on the Hill reads one CCDH task assignment from early 2024. Meeting with 16 congressional offices over the next 2 weeks to give updates on the Elon lawsuit. Reads another, referring to Musk's since-dismissed lawsuit against CCDH, accusing it of manipulating data to make a case for proliferation of hate speech on X. Now, here's what's dangerous about this organization. It says here, CCDH also held meetings with federal legislators while pushing for change in the U.S. toward a censorious proposal it calls the STAR framework, which would create an independent digital regulator. More government, folks, that could impose consequences for harmful content, similar to what Ofcom is doing. STAR's core concepts are similar to Europe's just instituted Digital Services Act and Britain's even more stringent Online Safety Act, the one that King Charles gave the royal assent, which puts the national media regulator, Ofcom, in charge of determining fines for uncooperative platforms. Yes, that's the same Ofcom that put pressure on GB News to push Lawrence Fox out, to push Dan Wooten out, as well as the man of God, Calvin Robinson, out. Ain't no way that that's going to happen, Imran. You need to pack your bags and get out of here, because the last thing we need is another government entity being influenced by the UK on curbing Americans' free speech. That ain't going to happen because, remember, we fought a war for this. So go fuck yourself, Imran. I think what people really need to understand is that all of this is connected together. Remember 1 year ago, Dan Wooten was targeted by Sarah Data, and this hit piece came out by leftist media outlet that Harry had been working with, Byline Times. Remember what was said at the beginning of this video. This has always been about power and controlling the narrative. And it's clear to everyone, as a result of this investigation done by Matt Taibbi and Paul Thacker, that the Labour Party is in cahoots with the Democratic Party in order to influence not only ideologies, but policies in favor of the globalists. prior to this so-called slanderous expose, otherwise known as a hit piece against Dan Wootton and the royal family, Byline Times had begun their attack campaign beginning in August of 2023. As you can see, leading up to the release of that article or that full spread expose, you have 7 articles that kept going after Dan Wootton. And the reason why they did that is because they ultimately wanted to hurt GB News. These liberal leftist progressives want to shut down anyone's voice that does challenge their narratives. And GB News was one of those voices. They knew that if they went after Dan Wootton because he was the biggest personality on that space, they knew that it would hurt GB News, and which it did. But Dan Wootton is actually having the last laugh because he is doing better than what GB News is doing at this moment. Harry and Meghan have been lockstep in support of all of this. Look what they did to Piers Morgan. Look what they did to Dan Wootton. Look what the Sussex Squad says about Angela Levin and Camilla Tomney. I mean, it's attack, attack, attack. And these voices are in support of the royal family and conservative values. They don't like that. They don't like that they can't control the narrative to brainwash everyone. And the reason why these 2 entitled assholes didn't go after journalists here in the United States is because the left already controls the media. A perfect example of one of these liberal, woke Hollywood elites is Hugh Grant. Even though he's not American, we see him as a Hollywood star, and he has been on this crusade, just like Harry, to bankrupt pretty much Rupert Murdoch's enterprises because of them hacking him and exposing him being with a prostitute. Apparently, after Hugh Grant went through this horrible experience, he joined forces with a UK nonprofit called Hacked Off, in which their foundation is campaigning for a free and accountable press. Now, here we have another charity that on the surface looks like they're doing good for society, but really is doing some shady things in the background. So we have Graham Johnson, who has been a part of Hacked Off, working with Hugh Grant and helping with these lawsuits against the Murdoch enterprises. This same ex-convict is tightly aligned with Prince Harry in helping and supporting his phone hacking case, and is tightly aligned with Byline Times as he reports for Byline Investigates. This has nothing to do with press accountability. This really has everything to do with controlling the narrative. You cannot take an organization seriously when they're supporting a media outlet that is constantly putting out propaganda and lies, particularly around Meghan and Harry. In itself should tell you enough. Hugh Grant knows this, but he's spitting a whole bunch of bullshit in the name of democracy.
Newspapers need power, a lot of power, because they're really important to democracy. But, he said pompously, with power comes responsibility.
Yes.
And in Britain, it is a kind of uniquely UK problem.
Yeah.
There's no responsibility, and these big newspaper owners, largely non-tax-paying newspaper owners, are living above the law and invading the privacy of people whose kids have been killed in a road accident or whatever to get the sensational article. And no one dares to take them on in Britain because they're so scared of them, especially the politicians. And that's why politicians really, in my country, are chosen by the press. Our Prime Minister is largely chosen by dint of how much he's sucked up to the newspaper barons. So that's what my campaign is about.
With that being said, let's give some visibility to what Dan Wootton said when he began his YouTube journey. One of his very first videos on his Dan Wootton Outspoken channel, highly recommend you subscribe, is that he calls Prince Harry out for his relationship and links to these shady and dodgy people. Let me remind you that these are the very same people that cost Dan Wootton his job.
But I have learned the disgraced Duke has cultivated a private working relationship with Byline Times to pursue one goal, taking down his enemies in the British media. It's no surprise to know I was top of that list. For a lengthy period after Meghan Markle first entered the royal family, there was silence from the MSM as the American Duchess intended to weaponize false allegations of racism. But I blew that cozy consensus apart. Reporting was never to do with my personal feelings about Harry and Meghan. In fact, I had hoped the marriage would work and openly supported the new Duchess being allowed to carve out her own niche within the firm, taking into account her unique Hollywood background. But the couple never wanted success, quite the opposite, in fact. Not that Harry and Meghan didn't use every possible tactic to shut me up. They made complaints to the newspaper regulator Ipso, leaned on other royals to complain about me to my editor, unleashed their odd-looking little attack dog, that weird bloke Omid Scobie, turned former celebrity acquaintances like James Corden against me, threatened to file a lawsuit falsely claiming I'd broken the law while reporting on them, and brazenly attacked me in public. I mean, Harry even used the phrase sad little man to describe me in his autobiography Spare, which I thought was the height of irony. But nothing was going to stop me reporting the truth. So eventually Harry succumbed to dark forces. The gullible bloke had been captured by the self-obsessed wannabe celebrity lawyer David Sherborne on a one-man mission to destroy the British Free Press, and a relationship with Byline Times was soon born. I can also reveal today that Harry has spent months negotiating with Byline Times about sitting down with the blog for a tell-all interview. It's astonishing that the fifth in line to the throne would be considering talking to such a disgraceful publication that is totally unregulated and reliant on criminals for its reportage. Unless, of course, they had been conducting his dirty.
But that's the thing, they have. In conjunction with the media, as well as the American media, the Labour Party, the Democrats, they all work together in order to slander and to take people down, like Dan Wooten, like Piers Morgan, contributed to costing Dan Wooten his job. There had been a section dedicated to Labour MP Chris Bryant, referencing and supporting Christopher Boozy's bot Sentinel Fugazi report. Christopher Bryan writes, the case of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle forcefully makes the point. Data analyst Bot Sentinel looked at 114,000 Twitter posts about the couple since January 2020 and found two things: that 55 accounts had been set up solely to post negative material about them, and 28 more accounts that have been set up to amplify those messages, and that the Twitter algorithm, which suggests people you might want to follow, urged someone who had viewed one hate account to follow several others. Those 83 accounts were responsible for 70% of the negative content targeting the couple. One account posted 111,031 messages. Bot Sentinel reckons there are 264 single-purpose hate accounts targeting them. To the innocent bystander, it looks like the whole world hates Harry and Meghan. But this is not just ordinary, spontaneous, or altruistic hatred. It is deliberate and coordinated. All lies. All lies. And when you think about it, look at how much hatred that Donald Trump gets on a daily basis. You really think this very small handful of accounts putting out just a small amount of messages compared to the millions, if not billions of messages that are being put out about Donald Trump? Or what about Catherine and the thousands of accounts that Meghan and Harry are behind, supporting, going after, and attacking Catherine, inciting hatred and racism? I must stress, this was never about online harm or safety or the kids or even mental health. This was always about power, control, and money. These liberal progressives are so fixated on people earning money for what they deem wrongthink. They disguise it and use the excuse of hate in order to shut people down. And that's the thing. Hate is part of the human condition. You are free to dislike something. You don't have to like everybody, Lola. These left-wing nuts don't care if they're putting out mis and disinformation, as long as they get the point across that anyone who dares to criticize Meghan Markle would be categorized in the category of hate, which who are they to decide what is the definition of hate? Lola. Labour MP Chris Bryant is equally guilty of doing this, because in this same written article, he makes it a point to say, like all clickbait, it uses hatred to entice people to follow a link to an article on another client webpage where money is to be made, which is how it knowingly monetizes hatred, as shown by the network of YouTube channels that notched up 497 million views and $3.48 million on the back of hateful and inaccurate material about Meghan. 3 YouTube channels had more than 70 million views and earned $494,730. And there you have it, folks. What business is it of theirs for people to be able to use platforms that are available to them to earn an income? Just because you don't like what's being said doesn't mean that they don't have the right to be able to take advantage of what these platforms have to offer. Nobody is talking about the amount of money that Meghan is making from all that anti-Catherine content. I mean, when you look at all the avenues in media where Meghan has vomited lies about Catherine, she's making a killing. Don't think that she's not. Don't think that she's not monetizing all that hate. Of course she is. We'd be stupid to think otherwise. It's important to show you that Chris Bryant is aligned with Hacked Off. This Labour MP was a main speaker at the 9th annual Levinson lecture, The Truth Algorithm, in which he does talk again about Bot Sentinel's Fugazi report. Adding in this little fun fact, Labour MP Chris Bryant also nominated Joe Biden for Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I also would like to point out that Christopher Bouzy also is aligned with Byline Times, giving multiple interviews for various articles. The first one dates back to July 29, 2021, in which the headline reads, Automated Culture Wars, Digital AstroTurfing Campaign Amplifies Fox News-Inspired GB News. Then there's this article, featured in Byline Times, Mainstream White Supremacy Sits Behind Social Media Hate of Kamala Harris, pulling the same bullshit that he did with Meghan Markle. That was dated May 2022. And then we have this other race-baiting article, Misogyny and White Supremacy, the far-right reaction to Supreme Court abortion decision. So obviously everything is very skewed to supporting the policies and the liberal woke mindset that has been destroying Western civilization. I wonder how much money Christopher Bouzy has been making off of stirring division, gaslighting, and spewing hatred and racism against white people, all in the name of keeping people divided, not united, as the Democratic Party would like. And finally, the last point that I want to make, which brings us full circle, is that the CCDH is also aligned with Byline Times, giving multiple interviews and is featured and talked about in multiple articles in the argument to push for more regulation on social media. Now, the whole point of me showing you this and bringing this up is to show you how they are all connected between Harry, Bouzy, the Labour Party, Byline Times, Hacked Off, and the CCDH all working together to drive policy and regulation to shut down free speech of opposing views. Now, if you watch my psychological warfare series, it all goes back to wanting globalism versus populism. And that's the biggest fear with NATO, the UN, the WEF. They're afraid if populism rises, like what's happening here in the United States with Donald Trump, their positions with power and control in the world becomes jeopardized. And that's the threat that Donald Trump brings to these globalists. That's why they hate him so much, especially the EU. The thing that I see concerning for Brits now is that you have the equivalent of the Democratic Party in the UK, and I could easily see Keir Starmer start trying to edge his way back into the European Union and becoming a part of that socialist communist state where there'll only be two classes, the ruling class, which are the globalists and wealthy elite, and then everybody else who they are controlling. That's not a free society.
Do you think that Brexit has ruined your country?
Well, I do. Said with a smile. Yeah. And actually, now the majority of Brits do as well. Yeah. I think that will...
So maybe it'll get fixed. I hope
Yeah,
so.
The Europeans may not want us back. They may say, well, choose one and stick to it.
And this is the problem right here with these idiots. They're so disconnected to what the regular people have been going through as a result of being forced to meet these Agenda 2030 goals. The only people that are benefiting from this are the very same people that put these bullshit goals together. Like, they are not improving and helping decrease poverty and hunger. They're making it worse. They talk about closing the wealth gap. No, they've widened it further. The only kind of equity that is possible to achieve in the wealth area is making us all poor. It's unrealistic to think that we can all be billionaires, and nobody's asking these billionaires to give up their money And they keep banging on about the collective and equity. Well, maybe they should put their hand in their pockets and redistribute their wealth instead of taking our wealth and redistributing it into their pockets. Let's be honest, we know that this is exactly what is going on. This is why they don't want Ukraine war to end. And that's just one facet of why they want to drive censorship. Controlling the narrative reduces anybody finding out about the corruption and the crimes against humanity that is currently being exposed as a result of not being able to curb speech. The only place that really you're going to get the real is on X, and this is why they want to shut it down. Now, I stumbled upon this post the other day, and I'm putting it up because I want to make a point here. The Democratic Party has the control of the left-wing media. This woman, Melissa Murray, is a professor at NYU, and she's also a commentator on MSNBC. She has been fully indoctrinated with this social justice woke mindset. You know, a fun fact about Melissa Murray, she has been a guest several times on the Sussex Squad podcast, so not only a part of the fake news machine, but she's also contributing to supporting this censorship initiative, whether she realizes it or not. I mean, probably realizes it because she has involvement with the Aspen Institute. What I struggle to comprehend is, Melissa Murray is a very smart woman. She went to the University of Virginia and graduated at a Yale Law School. She teaches constitutional law at NYU. So how did she get mixed up with Meghan Markle? The only answer that I can give to that is because these Ivy League schools all have been infected with this woke mindset. And she has been indoctrinated and groomed into this perspective of these people like Hillary being good and a champion for women, when none of these people are a champion for anything. They're just a champion for themselves. But anyhow, getting back to the Center for Countering Digital Hate, it turns out after this was exposed yesterday by Matt Taibbi and Paul Thacker, the Trump campaign is furious that a group with ties to the new government of Prime Minister Keir Starmer is targeting its political allies while parent organization Labor Together openly advises Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. A spokesperson for the Trump campaign had said, "Everything is going to be investigated. This will be at the top of the list." I have this sneaky suspicion that Trump knows how the UK had interfered with this election cycle. I also think that they're going to find out and see how the UK interfered with the 2020 election cycle, which don't be surprised if Harry's name starts coming up and tied to this. As I've said this whole entire time, Harry and Meghan interfered with the 2020 election. There is no mistake on that one. If they are saying now CCDH is working with groups to try and suppress voices online, that was the same thing that was happening back in 2020 when they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story and so many people had been deplatformed from the Megxit community. So it's coming, folks. I feel it. Also, I don't think it's a coincidence that the Heritage Foundation requested records for Donald Trump's mother-in-law and had received the proper documentation with the appropriate B6 redactions. So the excuse that the court is giving that Harry's security and safety outweighs the public interests is simply bullshit, because here you have one of the most hated men on this planet, of all people that should be worried about security and his family's security would be Donald Trump, not this little shit. So they proved that even Melania's mom, her records can be made available with the appropriate redaction. I think the Heritage Foundation was really savvy here because I think they knew that they were going to get pushback from the Biden administration, DHS. Hence, back in May of 2024, they went ahead and requested these records. So here we are, and now they have put this into the system saying, here, look, if you could do this for the family of a former president of the United States, you could do it for this ginger prick. And they've made a good argument in it, but savvy that they thought ahead to go ahead and request these records and have been sitting on it. It was really interesting to see the kinds of records that DHS had released to the Heritage Foundation pertaining to Melania Trump's mom. You had all her certificates for her citizenship, as well as medical records and photocopies of her passport and visa. Those are things that I believe would be coming back in this lawsuit about Prince Harry. What you see up on your screen is really what the Heritage Foundation wants to see of Prince Harry, whether he checked off yes or no. It's that simple. But the fact that they have stonewalled the Heritage Foundation at every turn leads to believe that either he didn't fill it out and there are no records on him, or he lied and they are protecting him because of the other information that's contained in his file as to why he was over here. Or if he was on a diplomatic passport, that sort of collapses the whole narrative of Megxit. Remember, I was telling you that I don't believe the story that we were told as to why they fled to the United States in the middle of the night because they were so hounded by the paparazzi in Canada was actually the truth. I believe that they had this in the plans and they were ready to come over here to do what they have been doing the last couple of years, which is trying to undermine our Constitution and meddle in our government. Harry was here to support the Biden-Harris campaign to get into office, hence the reason why he had been aligned with so many of these organizations in order to stop advertisers from advertising on hate accounts. And then the people that he teamed up with, like Renee DeResta and who else was it? Safia Noble in 2020, all shows you that he was a part of this disinformation plan that has been executed onto the world, going back to trying to get these guardrails or regulations enforced all around the world. And we have been witnessing that. And, I think that this is going to come out. I am confident because it's not a coincidence.
Say your uncle in Ohio said something about Kamala Harris is isn't unfit to be a president because he doesn't have a child.
Okay.
That kind of shit is automatically demoted.
Meet Jeevan Gawali, a senior software engineer at Meta.
Are they doing a good job protecting our democracy? Because I can see these right-wing groups setting up Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts for that matter, right? And just start posting disinformation, be like, Harris is blah blah blah.
That's all going to be demoted 100%. The civic classifier is strong.
Would he be notified that
the person would not be notified? But there's these things that we collect is if a bunch of items that if at least a couple of items that a person has created has violated civic classifier, then they're also ready.
I think Trump and a few others know what Harry has been up to with not only our government, but certain deep state actors. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. I do think that there's more to this story on all those immigration forms and records that should be in Harry's file that we're going to get to see. And I don't think it's going to paint the picture that they told the public back in 2020. We'll just have to wait and see what happens next. But what do you guys think? Definitely leave your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
such a fraud?